Have you ever thought about how all things are connected? Like in nature, all living things work together to produce the natural world. If we upset one factor in the system, it affects all the others. So growing things, like trees, require three basic components: soil, water, and sun. Too much water throws off the balance and will diminish the tree's growth, or even eventually kill it. In a similar way, too little sun produces the same situation. It's all about balance. This is called systems theory. Everything is connected to everything else, and a change in one factor will produce an unpredictable change in the others. This applies to everything, especially living things. Everything is connected to everything else, and a change in one factor will produce an unpredictable change in the others. So let's think about a recent example of systems theory. The 2010 British Petroleum Deepwater Horizon oil spill was a dramatic environmental disaster for the Gulf Coast. BP oil rigs leaked between 17 and 39 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, lots of which washed ashore. Many of us think the disaster stopped there, with polluted water, dying fish, decimated shorelines, and diminished marine and plant life. But that's not the whole story by far. How did this event really upset the balance of life in the Gulf Coast? Well, first, the effects of the environment were well documented and will continue for about 100 years. Second, the effects of the economy of the Gulf Coast were equally dramatic. The shrimping industry was decimated and is no longer a strong economic driver in that region. This is no small issue for those whose income is entirely dependent upon fishing for a living. And the tourism industry was severely affected, and of course those who depend on tourism for a livelihood. Third, the social and cultural structure of the coast was equally affected. The countless communities and families whose personal lives depend on the fishing industry have been forever changed. Families who have fished for a living for generations can no longer do so, and their cultural identity as shrimpers is gone. As well, many of those dependent upon fishing must now find employment in other sectors, often requiring them to move elsewhere or find employment in other areas. This uproots families, relatives, and friends. Fourth and finally, it has been noted that individual lives have been severely affected, as one can imagine if your way of life and means of making a living suddenly disappeared almost overnight. The levels of depression, stress, and anxiety have skyrocketed due to these tragic events. So what appears to be only an environmental disaster has dramatically affected virtually all factors of life along the coast. A change in one factor, environmental, has produced unpredictable changes in the others, economic, social, cultural, and the individual. So let's take a look at the last factor for a moment, what we call individual sustainability. Individual sustainability includes creating harmony, interconnectedness, and relatively high levels of awareness in one's values, thoughts, behaviors, and actions, as well as maintaining an increasing control over one's intellectual, physical, social, emotional, and philosophical life. Here's a very simple example. So, I went to the gym this morning. It was Member Appreciation Day, and a table of food and coffee was set out for the members. I looked at the bagels, peanut butter, and coffee. I read the label of the discount peanut butter. Making peanut butter only requires smashing up peanuts. However, the label had 6 ingredients, including white sugar and hydrogenated vegetable oil, both proven to be considerably unhealthy for humans. In addition, the coffee creamer was not really cream or dairy in any way, shape, or form. It had at least a dozen ingredients, several of which I could not pronounce. A side note, never eat anything that you can't pronounce, or anything that has a number in it. Now, one would expect an organization so very dedicated to good health would be careful to demonstrate the healthy balance that physical exercise and good nutrition provides. You need both activities to be healthy. Seriously, you can consume as many Big Macs and as much Coke as you would like, but it will never support good general health, no matter how far you can run or how much you can bench press. The human body requires balance. Get it? Clearly, someone at the gym does not understand that good health is a system that requires both physical exercise and a consumption of healthy food. So here are the basic contexts of individual sustainability: emotional sustainability, intellectual sustainability, physical sustainability, social sustainability, and philosophical sustainability. The object of individual sustainability is to create an effective balance in our abilities across these contexts, as well as begin to identify how our overall sustainability requires attention to all these factors. Our first factor is emotional sustainability. This one requires some emotional intelligence. That is, understanding our emotional responses to life's events, which includes being able to predict and, almost more importantly, regulate our emotions, and an increasing understanding of how others are affected by our emotional responses. Psychologists call this emotional self-regulation or self-control. But it's really about not being a victim of our own emotions or making others victims of our emotions. So this requires some reflective thinking, emotional responsibility, and more importantly, practice in getting to know yourself. Now let's look at our second factor, the intellectual factor. Intellectual sustainability requires we educate ourselves across a wide variety of intellectual and artistic disciplines, and we recognize the influence, interconnectedness, and power of knowledge. This includes developing a creative approach to understanding how knowledge is developed, adapted, applied, manipulated, transferred, synthesized, analyzed, and evaluated. Our flexible approach to intellectual sustainability is a lifelong task, and for many individuals, the central influence in the growth of all our individual sustainability contexts. Physical sustainability. This is the ability to maintain or improve one's health by means of physical exercise, the measured consumption of nutritious food, while reducing the consumption of foods that compromise health, the control of stress, and a balanced relationship between time and technology, also an intentional approach to preventing as well as addressing sickness and disease. Our next factor is social sustainability. This requires an individual to be a productive member of a community, whether that community be a family, a workplace, a city, or even the planet. A socially sustainable lifestyle requires understanding that the collective effort is necessary for communities to function well for all of its members. In short, this means understanding our democratic role and responsibility in a community, communicating effectively, participating selflessly, and putting the needs and desires of the community before our own when appropriate, for the well-being of others. Understanding social justice and equitable treatment of others, despite personal, political, economic, or religious considerations, is central to maintaining social sustainability. Our final factor in sustainability is philosophical. Throughout history, humans have struggled with those unanswerable questions about life. What is the meaning of life? What should I do with my life? What happens when we die? Questions like these are ones that provide the core foundation for all human intent and action. Yet it seems like we spend less time on our personal philosophies than we do on anything else. How odd. Reflecting upon the nature of life and existence and adopting life-affirming values and behaviors is central to maintaining our productive relationship with ourselves and with others. Having an active and reflective inner life results in a personal philosophy that forms the foundation for most everything we do. Predictable and life-affirming human intention and action promotes survival and maintains human existence. Philosophical and spiritual matters have always comprised a big sales market for religion, politics, economics, and social policy. It seems that everyone has the answers for you, when really, developing a philosophical or spiritual foundation for your life is the most personal of matters, and only you can provide answers and direction in your life. Individual sustainability sounds like a lot of work. Well, of course it is. Ultimately, it's our life's work, to live in harmony with ourselves and others in the natural world. One of our principal reasons our planet is in such social, economic, and environmental peril is that too many of us avoid taking responsibility for ourselves, preferring to get our direction and answers from other political, economic, and religious sources. All change and all understanding of life and how to live it begins with understanding ourselves. Few will dispute this, and philosophers, intellectuals, and artists throughout history have promoted this approach to peace, growth, and human survival. Quite clearly, it's just the way it works. No matter how much we seek wisdom and understanding outside ourselves, what we end up understanding and using to improve our lives begins with what we understand about ourselves. While the paths to such wisdom and consciousness are many, they are all based on our own ability to demonstrate our values through our behaviors. We can say and believe anything we want, but when it all comes down to it, our behaviors tell others the truth about who we are, every single time. First and foremost, we are responsible for ourselves. Starting to change is the first step. Change is slow, and that's okay. There's no rush. Change the small things first. All change starts with individual change.